Loading live. I know I'm live a little bit before it says that, but this is how it goes. All right, guys. So blue, green, brown, and the 5. This is for Ms. Hyde. She asked some questions specifically about the 5, and we're going to go into a little bit. I'm going to come close. I tried to go outside and do the form, and what we got was some interrupted signals. So bear with me at this angle if you can put up the way I look. Okay, so blue belts, green belts, and brown belts. Continue with last week's lesson, but this is what I want you to work on. I want you to work on your, I know you can't do a lot of cardio, but do your sit-ups and push-ups fast. Get your heart rate going. Don't overexert yourself. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself that way. And you know what I want at blue belt, how many you're supposed to be doing? 75 every other day. And green belt, you're supposed to be doing 100 every other day. And a brown belt, 150 every other day. Try and amp that up to today of each, right? Squats, jumping jacks, push-ups, sit-ups, whatever you can get in. Then work on your stuff. Let me rephrase that, because if you get tired, it's great to continue working out for cardio. But if you do it before you practice, your muscles will shift to compensate for your tiredness, and you may not do anything perfectly. So do me a favor, practice perfectly first, then do your cardio and your workouts. On that note, this is what I got for you this week. I want you to start with the highest number of kata that you have, and I want you to work backwards without stopping. So if you got the 5, you're doing the 5, you're doing the 4, you're doing long 3, you're doing short 3, you're doing long 2, you're doing short 2, you're doing long 1, you're doing short 1, in that order. And you do them, and you can do them twice if you want, but at least once all the way through. If you're practicing a certain kata, and I know you are, and it doesn't have to be for that your specific rank, it can be any kata that you're working to perfect at the moment, do it first. Do it however many times it takes to perfect the idea that you're working on. Then do your katas in reverse order. Then do your 150 sets or reps of your exercise. Got it? Blue, green, brown. Those are yours. All right, so the 5. Ms. Hyde reached out, and I know she's got it. She's been working on it. She just asked my take on the 5, and you know, she would like to look at what I have to say about that. So here we go. And I'm going to move you to. I tried to go outside and do this, and we lost signal, so I'm going to do it in the house here in a minute. But just a quick note on my take on katas. As I grew up in the Kenpo world, learning a kata to me didn't really take on significance till after short 3. I'll tell you why. I did short 1, did long 1, and loved them. They were new, they were exciting, they were my basics in motion. You got short 2, and I started working on the angles, and you could start to recognize certain techniques. But it wasn't until later when you go, okay, I learned this in short 2, and now I'm learning the technique a belt or 2 later. That's pretty cool. For me, I went ahead and rearranged the system later to where people learned the technique in the belt, then they learned the kata in the next belt that had the technique in there. So I rearranged the techniques, not the katas. Okay, that was just for me, and we can explain that later. But going forward into long 2, you start looking at some of the extensions into the techniques and different angles and how to reset and reincorporate. For me, it was always about the self-defense motion. The only time I ever saw the artistic part of a kata was, and it's no fault of my instructors at all, it was where my head was. You understand that? You don't receive anything you're not ready to receive. They could have been showing me really cool artistic stuff all the time, but I was really geared toward the self-defense in the Kenpo system. So that's what my head was seeing. And when I got to short 3, I was like, yes, right? But everything kind of was that way anyway. But then you go to tournaments. We've been going to tournaments since, inception. And you get to see the Kung Fu guys. And this was my experience, right? And the Kung Fu guys were doing stuff that didn't look like our self-defense techniques. They were same basics, same moves, same type of strikes, but nothing was in sets like our techniques. And I was like, wow, that's artsy. I couldn't see the self-defense in it. I wasn't looking for it. I was looking at how freaking cool it looked while they were doing it. So my head exploded. It's like, okay, now I got to learn 2 different things. I learn my Kenpo stuff, and when I get my black belt, I'll go study some Kung Fu stuff, and I'll get what Kenny Perez and Jerry Cook and those guys have out there, and so that's what I wanted to do, and I did. So my whole take on katas expanded. the more Kenpo katas I learned after black, because I definitely went back to Kenpo, obviously, and dedicated myself to that. The more I learned about katas, then I started seeing the art behind the moves and started looking at Kenpo differently. And I noticed that people did the katas different. Same kata, different interpretation. Well, why was that? Well, some people did them just for the move. And I say just, um, some people did them without practical application in mind. It's not good or bad, right? It's not good or bad. What am I thinking? I'm trying to come up with another gentleman's name. I don't want to leave without. I'll come up in a minute. But so when I watched certain moves in the kata, I could see, okay, I understand what they're doing. That's not how I want to do it, but I understand what's happening. Then I got to the point in my learning process where I started mixing the technique. It's like, I know this technique inside out. And the more I apply it, the more I understand there's limits to the way it's written. So to try to do it in a kata, the way it's written, the way I see it, was taught, witness other people do it, try to adapt and find my own way, it's not working. Because for me, short three was it. Short three was a fighting kata. Wow, I could make it feel like one long fight, and it was awesome. And I would go back to short three all the time. So I got later in the four, the long kata and the four, a lot of transition. So transition became very important to me, Lori, if that's what you're working on. In the five, transitions, you're going to see me do a couple of transitions that may or may not be the way you know it. I had to adapt. What do you guys call it? Circling the horizon used to be called Shallow Warrior 2. You drop to one knee and you sweep the person, take them down, and then you stomp from that kneeling position. I cannot do that. I can't bend my left knee. I haven't been able to bend it since I was 16 after I busted it. And the doctors did whatever they did to it wrong. But so it doesn't bend. It doesn't bend. I adapted that, still do the takedown, but I don't go to one knee, and my axe kick comes from a standing position. So my transition into the next one, you'll see, is a little different. When I get to leaping crane, it kind of skews with the transition, but it's still in the same direction. There are techniques in the five that towards the end, you said you were pretty good up to the sleeper. So I'm going to take it from the sleeper out. There's a brushing the storm or escaping the storm, whichever one. It's brushing the storm. That does, for me, doesn't work the way it's written. When I taught these to special forces, when we worked on with the police departments, I was very privileged to have the boys, and I say that, and I go pretty hard with these techniques. And when you're in those environments, for me, I want to know what I'm teaching is going to work, and not just maybe. And grabbing up somebody's leg when you step around behind them and push them down and kick them in the groin is a 50-50. And I don't like 50-50s. And it doesn't, for me, the way I learned it, didn't address removing the weapon from them. And I take the weapon. So you'll see the move look the same artistically, but in my head, I am definitely not scooping up the leg. But we can go over that later too. All right. So I'll walk through. I'm going to take you over to the stool and we'll walk through the last part of the fight for you real quick. But if you have specific questions after you see this, you can go ahead and reach out. So you said you were pretty good through the sleeper. You can probably see my feet a little bit. But the sleeper starts at 6 o'clock. So once you get to here, you make contact, you take them down, you back up, and you start the next sleeper facing 12 o'clock. Once you step and take them down, how you get to this technique, there's the palm heel, there's the elbow. That's the disarming for me. There's the kick. Same thing applies to the technique, but I'm disarming the weapon there. The transition, stepping back to falling falcon, this is all art and transition. Okay, then you do the takedown, the break. This becomes what it is for you based on your self-defense, the pinning, the takedown. Again, I'm shifting and adjusting my stances because of room, kick, break, kick, stop. When you get to the Shaolin Warrior or the circling the horizon, you punch your elbow. This is where I don't go down on my knee. I grab the shoulder, hip, and take them down here. My stomp becomes this position here. The adjustment is still the same to that point there. But then I have to turn to face this direction for leaping crane. Again, step, step. Start your bow. Touch your shoulder, your legs. Sorry. Yeah. So, if you've got specific questions about that, let's do back and forth. Okay. You said you were good with a sleeper. When you get to the overhead clip strike, whatever you call it, brush and storm, and you step, here's a brief introduction to how I handle it. Parry it, get the hand to hit the shoulder so the stick goes past you, step in and behind them, palm go to the chin. Same beginning. Drop the elbow to control their height, width, and depth on their chest or the rib cage. Right here, though, I have their arm. I circle and trap the arm, take the weapon, push the elbow, kick to the face, the ribs, the groin, or the knee. Not all of them. All right. So there you go. I hope that helped. If you want something else, reach out. Let's talk about it. Okay, guys. I love you. Have a great week. I'll be on here answering questions. I love to answer questions. It's the self-defense, right? Somebody throws a punch. That's a question. How do you handle it? I'm up for it. Let's go for it. Hang on. I'm still looking for Mr. C's instructor. Dang it all. Disrespectful of me to forget that name. I'll come back on and praise him later. Kung Fu as well. All right, you guys. I love you. Be good. Says, are you sure you want to end? Sure.